Why fools rule the world. The scientific explanation. There is a question that intelligent people have been asking in frustration for as long as there have been intelligent people. Why do the least qualified consistently end up in positions of greatest power? Why does the confident incompetent so reliably outperform the humble expert in the competition for leadership? Why does the person with the loudest voice and the fewest doubts so consistently rise to positions of authority over the quieter, more careful, more genuinely knowledgeable person? Why, in short, do fools rule the world? This is not just a complaint. It is a genuine scientific question with genuine scientific answers. And the answers, when examined honestly, reveal something important, not just about power and leadership, but about the specific ways in which human psychology, shaped by hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, in very different conditions than the ones we now inhabit, systematically produces outcomes that feel wrong and yet make complete evolutionary sense. The fool does not rule the world by accident. The fool rules the world by following a set of behavioral strategies that are extraordinarily well adapted to the specific game of status competition and social influence, even when they are catastrophically bad at actually solving problems or genuinely serving the interests of the people being led. Understanding why requires understanding something about how human beings assess competence, how they select leaders, and why the psychological mechanisms that evolved to help us navigate small tribal communities are producing systematically distorted outcomes in the complex, large-scale, institutionally organized societies we now inhabit. The Dunning-Kruger effect at scale. The most immediately relevant piece of scientific evidence for why fools rule the world is the Dunning-Kruger effect, the well-documented psychological phenomenon in which people with the lowest competence in a domain consistently overestimate their competence, while people with the highest competence consistently underestimate it. The original research, conducted by David Dunning and Justin Kruger in the late 1990s, demonstrated this pattern across multiple domains: logic, grammar, humor, and others. People who performed in the bottom quartile on objective measures of competence consistently rated their own performance as above average. People who performed in the top quartile consistently underestimated how well they had done relative to others. The mechanism behind this effect is both elegant and depressing. The same knowledge and skill that allows genuine competence in a domain also provides the metacognitive tools to accurately assess one's own competence in that domain. The person who lacks the knowledge to perform well also lacks the knowledge to recognize that they are performing badly. They are, in the specific technical sense, doubly incompetent. Incompetent at the task and incompetent at recognizing their incompetence. The genuinely competent person, by contrast, has enough knowledge of the domain to recognize the complexity they are navigating, the uncertainty that complexity produces, and the genuine limits of their own understanding. They know enough to know what they don't know. And this genuine self-knowledge produces the accurate and humbling recognition that their competence, however real, is limited. At the level of individual psychology, this produces an asymmetry that systematically favors the incompetent in competition for positions of authority. The incompetent person projects the confidence of someone who has no uncertainty, while the competent person projects the uncertainty of someone who has sufficient knowledge to recognize genuine complexity. And at the level of social dynamics, this asymmetry is catastrophic because the signals that human beings have evolved to use as proxies for competence are much more reliably produced by false confidence than by genuine competence. What humans are actually selecting for. When a group of people is choosing a leader, in the ancestral environment of a small tribal community, or in the modern environment of a corporate board or an electorate, they are not primarily evaluating the candidate's actual competence. They are evaluating the candidate's projected signals of competence. and the signals they are evaluating were calibrated by evolution in conditions that are radically different from the ones they are now being applied to. In the ancestral small group environment, the signals of genuine leadership quality were relatively reliable. The person who projected confidence had usually earned that confidence through demonstrated performance visible to everyone in the small community. The person who spoke with authority had usually developed that authority through genuine track record. The social information was rich, the community was small enough that reputations were accurate, and the fake couldn't sustain the performance long enough to consolidate power before being exposed. In the modern large group environment, none of these conditions hold. The electorate cannot know the actual track record of a candidate. They know only what they can perceive in brief, managed, media-mediated encounters. The employees evaluating a job candidate cannot observe genuine performance in genuine conditions. They know only what can be signaled in an interview. The investors evaluating a founder cannot assess actual business judgment. They know only the pitch. In these conditions, the ancestral heuristics that once reliably tracked genuine competence now track the performance of competence. And the performance of competence, the projection of the specific signals that evolve to be associated with genuine competence, is a skill that is entirely separable from actual competence. It can be developed by anyone willing to develop it, and the people most motivated to develop it are precisely the people who need it most, those without genuine competence to fall back on. The fool who knows they are a fool has a powerful incentive to become extraordinarily skilled at performing competence. The genius who knows they are a genius has less motivation to develop the performance, because the performance often feels like an uncomfortable distortion of the genuine thing. A direct pause. Let me stop here and ask you something that makes this personal rather than merely analytical. Can you think of a specific situation in your own professional or social life where you watched a clearly less competent person advance further than a more competent one? Where the confident underperformer got the role or the recognition while the humble expert was overlooked? Almost everyone can. And the almost universal availability of this experience is not just frustrating anecdote. It is data. It is the specific visible consequence of the psychological dynamics we have been describing playing out in the specific environments of real lives. Share in the comments what you observed, not to vent, but to contribute to the honest examination of a pattern that deserves to be understood rather than simply resented. The specific advantages of false confidence. Beyond the Dunning-Kruger asymmetry, there are specific behavioral advantages that false confidence provides in the competition for leadership that are worth examining directly, because they explain not just why incompetent people tend to rise, but specifically how the social dynamics of leadership selection reliably produce this outcome. The first advantage is conversational dominance. People who speak with high confidence, low hedging, and minimal acknowledgement of uncertainty tend to dominate conversations. They speak more, interrupt more, and fill the space that more tentative speakers leave unfilled. And conversational dominance, across multiple studies, is one of the strongest predictors of being perceived as a leader by the group. The genuinely expert person who qualifies their statements, acknowledges the limits of their knowledge, and expresses genuine uncertainty where genuine uncertainty exists, is doing the intellectually honest thing. But in the specific competition for perceived leadership, intellectual honesty is a disadvantage. It signals in the evolutionary heuristic that is still running in the brains of the people evaluating. Something like, this person doesn't fully know what they're talking about, even when the opposite is true. The second advantage is decision speed. Genuinely competent people tend to be slower to decide because they are genuinely engaging with the complexity of the situation they are deciding about. They are aware of the genuine trade-offs, the genuine uncertainties, the ways in which more information would improve the decision. This genuine engagement with complexity produces careful, thoughtful, often excellent decisions that arrive more slowly than the rapid, confident, often terrible decisions of the person who is unimpeded by awareness of complexity. In most social and institutional environments, decision speed is rewarded over decision quality. Partly because the quality of a decision often only becomes visible long after the decision is made, while the speed is immediately visible, and partly because the confident decisiveness that comes with false certainty signals to the evolved heuristic, someone who is in control of the situation. The third advantage is status signaling. The specific behaviors associated with high status, the expansive posture, the relaxed demeanor, the assumption that one's contributions will be welcomed, the specific quality of entering a room as though the room was waiting for you, are both causes and effects of high status in a self-reinforcing loop. And these behaviors are much more accessible to the person who genuinely believes they are more important than they are than to the person who is accurately modest about their own importance. The fool who genuinely believes they are the smartest person in the room walks into rooms the way the smartest person in the room is supposed to walk in. And this authentic expression of genuinely felt high status produces the social signals that social environments respond to with deference and authority. The institutional amplifiers. The individual psychological dynamics we have been describing are amplified rather than corrected by most of the institutional structures that modern societies have developed to select and develop leaders. Job interviews are extraordinarily well-designed selection mechanisms for confident performance and extraordinarily poorly designed selection mechanisms for genuine competence. The interview format rewards the ability to speak fluently and confidently about one's own abilities, a skill that is strongly correlated with the Dunning-Kruger effect and weakly correlated with actual performance in the role being interviewed for. Studies consistently find that structured interviews based on standardized questions and objective scoring have substantially better predictive validity for job performance than the unstructured conversational interviews that most organizations use. But the unstructured conversational interview is preferred because it feels more informative, which is itself an effect of the heuristics we have been discussing. Democratic elections are extraordinarily well-designed selection mechanisms for charismatic performance and extraordinarily poorly designed selection mechanisms for genuine governance competence. The specific skills that win elections, the ability to project confidence, to speak memorably in short sound bites, to connect emotionally with large audiences, to sustain a simple narrative in the face of complex reality, are almost entirely orthogonal to the specific skills that produce good governance. And the voters, selecting on the basis of the first set of skills, are not being irrational by the standards of the evolved heuristics they are applying. They are just applying heuristics calibrated for a different environment to a problem the heuristics were not designed to solve. Corporate hierarchies are extraordinarily well-designed selection mechanisms for the political skills of managing upward, the ability to make one's superiors feel informed, competent, and respected, and extraordinarily poorly designed selection mechanisms for the technical skills of actually producing excellent work. The person who is genuinely excellent at the work, but who lacks the specific social intelligence to make their excellence visible to the right people, consistently loses to the person who is moderately competent at the work but extraordinarily skilled at making that competence visible. These are not failures of these institutions in the sense of designs going wrong. They are predictable outputs of designs that were built by human beings applying the same evolved heuristics that produced the problem in the first place. What can actually be done? The honest question, having understood the specific mechanisms that produce this outcome, is whether anything can actually be done about it. Whether the systematic elevation of the confident incompetent over the humble expert is simply a fixed feature of human social organization, or whether specific, deliberate interventions can shift the outcome. The honest answer is, partially yes, with significant effort, and in specific conditions. The specific conditions that most reliably reduce the advantage of false confidence are those in which performance is measured objectively and results are made visible. When the outcome of a decision is clearly traceable back to the person who made it, when the quality of work is measured by standards that are not subject to the influence's ability to shape the perception of their own performance, when the feedback loop between action and consequence is tight enough that bad decisions cannot be buried under confident explanations of why they were actually good, In these conditions, genuine competence has a fighting chance. This is why scientific communities, engineering teams with clear performance metrics, and other domains with strong feedback loops tend, over time, to promote more genuine competence than domains with weak feedback loops. The fool who gets promoted in a science department because they are confident and charismatic will eventually produce research that doesn't replicate, and the consequences are visible. The fool who gets promoted in a political party because they are confident and charismatic can maintain the performance for decades without the equivalent exposure, because the feedback loop between their decisions and the visible consequences of those decisions is weak, long, and easily disrupted by confident alternative explanations. What this means practically: the deliberate design of institutions with stronger feedback loops, more objective performance measurement, and greater transparency about the connection between individual decisions and their consequences is the most reliable structural intervention for reducing the advantage of false confidence over genuine competence. And at the individual level, the deliberate cultivation of the specific social and communication skills that make genuine competence visible. The ability to express uncertainty in ways that communicate knowledge rather than weakness, the ability to speak with appropriate confidence about genuine expertise while maintaining honest uncertainty about genuine unknowns, is the most immediately actionable response to the dynamics we have been describing. The fool rules the world not because the world is broken, but because the world is running on software calibrated for a different environment. Understanding the software is the beginning of the only available alternative: the deliberate, effortful, institutionally supported attempt to build environments in which genuine competence has a better chance of being recognized and rewarded than the evolved defaults provide. That work is difficult, it is incomplete, it produces imperfect results in imperfect conditions. But it is the work that makes the world, slowly and without guarantees, slightly less reliably governed by the confident fool and slightly more reliably guided by the humble expert. It is worth doing. And it begins with exactly the kind of honest examination of how the current situation actually works that this conversation has been attempting to provide. Share what you see in your own experience of these dynamics. Subscribe and come back. The examination of why the world works the way it does is the beginning of the genuine effort to make it work better.